program are those of the speakers and the host, and do not necessarily reflect those of Yoakley Scott Corporation and your sports network.
Yeah, I've been closer to Jesus before, so can you help me out? Oh, can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? Or can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? Or can you help me out? Can you help me out? I've been scared to look in my soul. I've been afraid I would follow the road. Yeah, afraid of the things I've been told.
Hello, everybody. Welcome inside a Monday episode of Running Point on ysnlive.com. Brought to you, as always, by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. Anthony Hartwig alongside Ty Bartell. And we are very happy campers at YSN because we are now doting two OHSAA state champions. They both hail from the city of champions in Canfield. Canfield and South Range both bring back the trophy. Warren JFK finishes a great season with a loss to New Bremen, but what a great weekend in Canton. Ty, I know you were there on Friday, right? Did you go back on Saturday for JFK?
No, I didn't get a chance to go back. I was out at Wyndham on Saturday for
All right.
a header for that, so I didn't get a
But
chance.
you were able to experience Friday. I'm going to let you, like, from your perspective, start the show. Well, what you saw, what the experience was like, what the atmosphere was like down there in Canton.
It was a cool experience. I mean, the community really showed out. We saw a lot of Canfield people there a little early for the South Range game, and a lot of South Range fans stayed for Canfield's game directly following. And it was just really cool to see that community get out there, get loud, and support these athletes too. And I mean, it was a couple of good games where it really, in both instances, it felt like Canfield and South Range really weren't in too much trouble in those games. I think they well handled themselves in both contests.
They really weren't. You watched both games. And we'll start with the South Range game, since it was first on tap at 10:30 a.m. on Friday. South Range went right down the field, scored in their first possession. Take a good chunk of clock off the clock. I think it was like 4.5 minutes, 5 minutes, somewhere around there with the first touchdown. Ironton comes out, first play from scrimmage, hits a bomb and ties the game up at 7. That was the moment when I think everyone in the crowd was like, okay, this is going to be a battle. But throughout the rest of the game, Ironton really looked like the team that was less experienced. Even though they'd been to 3 out of the last 4 state championships, they were making mistakes, fumbling the ball, blocked punt, things like that. And I think the fumble was actually on the exchange. It was on the quarterback trying to do the read option, pulling the ball too late. So it was really self-inflicted wounds from Ironton. It really looked like South Range was not even a little bit affected by the stage or the lights at all, and Ironton a little bit for some reason was.
Billy Skirpak was incredible too. 6 touchdowns total, 3 rushing, 3 passing. Didn't throw a interception. Had a great passing completion percentage. Rather, I mean, he was really what kind of set the tone. And then after a while too, they got the running game going. And once they got that running game going, the offense at South Range was able to produce. It was really whatever they wanted. It was a buffet of offense. And honestly, I think the biggest struggle you saw was just Ironton making those tackles like we've seen the Raiders do all year long. They fight for those extra yards and they get all that it's worth and more. And it's like, it's tough to bring them down too when they're fighting, getting 3-4 extra yards on a play because they break 2 or 3 tackles almost, it seems like.
Shane Lindstrom is a slippery dude, man. I don't know if he lathers himself in oil before games, but he just slips out of guys. And that one on the sideline where he kind of dipped and spun out of a tackle, stayed in bounds somehow and kept running. That was one of the most incredible plays I've seen. And I know he did the flip, but the flip was just kind of instinct. That was an amazing performance by Shane Lindstrom on that play and the other plays that he had throughout the day.
No doubt. And I mean, Chris Colucci, Bailey Ryan did a great job in the line too, controlling the line offensively.
Both lines really controlled the line of scrimmage. I mean,
yeah, they went out there, and I mean, those two were, I feel like, the names that were said the most often throughout the broadcast, because I mean, they were doing work on the edges and they were really keeping everything contained for Ironton. It just never seemed like Ironton and the Tigers can get much going.
No, and that first drive with that one big play that exploded, and then a couple of touchdowns here and there when the game was really kind of out of hand. I mean, it was not in question the other times that Ironton really scored. You'll look at that, and you came into the game obviously with expectations yourself. Did you see a South Range controlled, blowout almost going that way?
It's tough for me to say exactly what I saw, because I mean, I truthfully never saw the Raiders in person.
Right,
That was
that's true.
that's my first game. I got to see the Raiders in person all season long. So I mean, I've only gotten to see them, what they were doing on the network. But yeah, I mean, I feel like it's fair to say that like this area has always been known for football too, and the Northeast region too always produces good football teams. So if you're able to make it out of regionals, you usually have a pretty solid chance at throwing your hat in the ring for a championship too. This Northeast region does. And for South Range too, I mean, they iron sharpens iron. There's a lot of great teams in the area. They couldn't get over Kirtland for a couple of years too, but I think those experiences of playing those type of teams, that kind of caliber of teams, really helped the Raiders going on this run this year.
We talked about it all last week. Kirtland was both teams' bugaboos, and maybe every team's different, but maybe this kind of solidifies the things that we kind of said in the years where South Range lost to Kirtland, that could have been a de facto state championship game between South Range and Kirtland. It happened in the regional finals. You can't do anything about them being in the same region, but Kirtland went on and just kind of took care of Ironton in those years. It wasn't a close game, and South Range did the same thing this year with Kirtland down in Division 6.
Kirtland, honestly, too, was one of those teams where we kind of thought that you could just give them the trophy right then and there, but they dropped that one too.
Not this year.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the beautiful thing about football. That's why you got to play the games too. I mean, yeah, they might be favorite, but any given Friday, any given Saturday as well.
We were real familiar with Kirtland because we kept playing them. But they went up against a Marion local team, by the way, not to get too off track from our YSN teams, but Marion local had won 13 state championships as a program.
They were huge too.
So it's not like
they faced a quality team. It wasn't someone that hasn't been.
Kirtland is not the only top dog in the state, but they have. I think the thing that is most impressive, and this probably because Marion local plays in that MAC, so it's really hard for them to pull this off. But Kirtland has the long. I think it's in the 60s now, regular season winning streak for Kirtland. So obviously it's different when you're playing in the Midwest Athletic Conference, when you have to play New Bremen, who also won a state championship in the season. You have to play Coldwater, you have to play St. Anne, teams like that all in your conference. Got to be brutal. Got to be hard to go undefeated multiple years in a row in the regular season in a conference like that.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's another case of iron sharpening iron too. Just another good conference too in another part of the state.
All right, so you talked about Billy Skurpak and the day he had. What about Brock Lowry in the second game at 3:00 that happened on Friday? Talk about a championship performance from Brock.
I mean, another case where they just really couldn't stop him. They didn't have much of an answer for him throughout the entire game, and the only mistake he really made was one interception that got away from him a little bit. But other than that, like, Brock Lowry was playing really out of his mind too, and I mean, limiting mistakes from that point on. And I didn't even mind necessarily the toss too that got intercepted. I'm all right being aggressive, and that's what take those shots. Coach Pavlansky likes to take those shots when it makes the most sense. Ground and pound, get some yardage, have them look for a run, and then utilize play action to throw it over top. But yeah, Brock Lowry was huge because even when the pass wasn't there too, his ability to break out of the pocket like he's done all season long was there again, and that was really the difference maker too. It's like, if I'm not going to get it with my arm, I can get it with my legs.
Yeah, and what really impressed me was, like, he never once put obviously he threw the interception, but that wasn't a game-changing turnover. It wasn't one of those ones that tipped the scales. So when the game really mattered, and when the game was the few times the game was in question, the few times they needed plays that really would define the outcome of the game, he never puts the ball in danger. He'll be able to get aggressive, like you said, in that one play. when the opportunity kind of presents itself, and that was one of the opportunities where Canfield could afford to get a little bit uber aggressive. But he's a very good quarterback at knowing the situation and playing situational football, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, when you really need him to protect the football, he's going to go out and protect the football. When you need him to get aggressive, he's going to turn on that switch and get into his little bit of a gunslinger mode and be a little bit more uber aggressive. Maybe put the ball in danger a couple of times. We've seen him throw a couple of picks this season, but he can switch that mode in his head really quick of, we need to be really locked down and be efficient in this particular drive, and then the next drive, hey, we need to be aggressive and put our foot to the metal.
What enables Brock Lowry to be aggressive too is just the confidence him and the entire staff has in this Cardinal defense. I mean, even if you do turn it over on downs, throw an interception, like you think you have pretty good chances at getting that offense back out on the field with the defense that the Canfield Cardinals compiled together this year. And I mean, we've highlighted it all year long, 28 seniors. And I mean, it makes all the difference in the world having that much experience, 4-year starters, a load of 17 and 18-year-olds on the team too. I mean, it's like one of those special years, and you wanted to make sure you cap it off when like this doesn't happen every year, and it's not something that happens all the time, having that many seniors that can all contribute in various ways. And Canfield made sure they got it done. I mean, it was just a case of no one was really on their level talent-wise.
We talked about their linebacker core, and man, not only did it shine all season, it shined again in Canton, Ohio. Their linebackers are, now we can officially say their linebackers are the best in the state in Division III. No one could stand up against their linebacking core. Not even Chardon. Chardon really struggled on offense against this defense of Canfield. And, I said it last week, and I think this week kind of proves it. That Chardon-Canfield game in the regional finals was kind of a de facto state championship, probably.
Likely so, because, I mean, Bloom Carroll, outside of the one score where they put together a really good drive highlighted by making some great completions, that was really the only kind of offense that they were able to muster up all night. And I mean, Canfield got them into a lot of third and medium, third and long situations where they had to go with what they were uncomfortable with. It was a run-heavy football team going into this game, and it was a run-heavy football team all season long. So when Canfield took that run away, forces their QB to start passing a little bit more, get you into a rhythm where you're uncomfortable. It really can just spell success for the Cardinals at that point.
That's a good point you bring up. In both these games, South Range and Canfield, both teams did a really good job. One, South Range did it by getting an early lead and just running and forcing Ironton to become one-dimensional because they had to come back in the game. But then Canfield did it by shutting down the run. Both teams did a really good job of making the other offense very one-dimensional. And when you do that to most high school teams, because there's not a lot of high school teams that are proficient in both running and passing the ball and could do both of them extremely well. Most high school teams, even at state level, can do one really well and then not struggle, but the other one's not where they want to be. They don't want to be behind the sticks. They want to be in this situation. So I thought both teams did a really good job of making their opponent one-dimensional in different ways. South Range obviously put Ironton in a position pretty quick where they had to score in a hurry to get back in the game, and they had to be a little bit more aggressive. Canfield did it by really shutting down the run. They didn't have a great first half. It was still close at halftime. So really shutting down the run and just making sure that Ironton Bloom Carroll wasn't going to get a lot of yards in the run game. So Bloom Carroll kind of had to abandon it a little bit in the second half and go to a more one-dimensional passing game, and it didn't work out too well.
Pretty similar things happened in that South Range game because, I mean, you have a running back that's committed to a D1 school in Wisconsin. And, I mean, when you talk about negative yardage on the day rushing going into the third quarter, you're doing something right. And it's like when you see negative rushing yards and you see you're down by 2-3 scores, you really have to abandon that run game. And it was unfortunate talking about Ironton's side because you essentially take your best offensive weapon off of the field then, and you have to try to get them involved in the pass game. But in that case, too, I mean, that's where South Range just put their best linebacker, best secondary player on them, and then just took care of them that way.
I think South Range came in with the right mindset because all week the talk was, Ironton has this guy, Wisconsin, he's a really good running back. And South Range kind of, instead of letting that get to them and letting that talk get to their head, they just realized, hey, if we beat his offensive line, it doesn't matter where he's going or how good he is. He needs holes to run through. And if we don't give him that, then we're going to have a good day. And they didn't. They didn't give him any holes. They didn't give him any opportunities to break through the line. And that's what they did. They just won the line of scrimmage. It doesn't matter how good of a running back you are. If the other team is winning the line of scrimmage against your offensive line, you are going to struggle. And I think that's what South Range kind of focused on. Like, he's a really good running back, but if we don't give him holes, it doesn't matter. He could be going to Alabama to be a Heisman Trophy winner. It doesn't matter. He's going to struggle if we win the line of scrimmage, and they absolutely did the whole game.
There's 11 guys on a football field for a reason, and you need all of them working in unison to become a good football team. And I mean, to kind of talk back of what Yeagley was saying, Coach Yeagley said at Legends, I mean, when he talked about the talent that Ironton had, I mean, it was a case of just saying, oh, that's great. I'm glad that they have that talent. I mean, I'm happy for them that they have all these guys, but I'm going to take my 66 guys over any of them any day of the week. And I mean, it's just believing in your team, believing in that mission, and believing what you can accomplish. And that was not just the case for the coaching staff and Coach Yeagley. That was the case for every single one of those 66 boys, looking at the brother to their left, to their right, and saying, I'm going to do this for you, and we're going to go out in style. We're going to do this together as one, and, stack the chips against us, stack everything against us, have everyone doubt us on the way here. Doesn't matter. I mean, play as a team, play as coherent as they did too, and play in unison, play as one. You can become unbeatable.
It was a great game for the novel football fan, because obviously you watch really good running backs, especially the ones on TV. You start to forget how important the offensive line is because they make it look so easy, But then you watch that game and you realize that it like you said, it truly is an 11-player, effort. You got to have a good offensive line, and obviously Ironton's running back are really, really good. But like I said, his offensive line didn't win the battle, and he couldn't do anything.
No, and I mean, throughout
the only way he could have done something is if he broke 3 tackles in the backfield, ran around like a chicken with his head cut off, and found a little seam. I mean, those are the only things running backs can do if you win the offense, if you win the line of scrimmage against their offensive line, is do something miraculous. And he wasn't able to do any of that.
A lot of talented running backs over the course of the final high school football weekend. And I mean, we got a chance to see a lot of them too. And a lot of them spread their wings for the last time. And another guy, I mean, I want to shout out because I've gotten the chance to see him play. And I'm glad he's going to get more offers. That Lamar Sperling from Akron-Hoban I saw that game Thursday, and I was this kid is unbelievable.
He had 334 yards at the end of 3 quarters of play, but Hoban still lost that game.
Yeah. I mean, not his fault. He
did have a fumble. He did fumble the ball away, which was, it was tough. But yeah, I mean, he had 334 yards at the end of 3. And it wasn't enough. That was a really good state championship game.
Great story on Ironton's side too, where their quarterback was born deaf and had those had the implants in his head too. And I mean, you want to talk about adversity and battling things that other kids don't have to battle. I mean, all respect to Ironton too. I mean, to get to that level, to get to that stage, and for you to be leading your team under center, that's something very impressive too. And I mean, that's not just a fantastic story. That's a heartwarming story. Just let someone that's just saying, I'm not going to let this stop me.
Maybe it's because we had more teams maybe there's a lot of good stories every year at the state championship, and we don't pay as much attention because usually we only have 1 team down there, maybe 2. We had 3 down there this year, so we had to pay attention to more games on more days. But there were a lot of really good stories in the OHSA state championships this year in YSN, out of YSN, because in YSN you had 2 teams going for their first ever state championship game. You had Canfield trying to win their first. South Range got to their first, trying to win their first. But then outside of YSN, you had Ironton's quarterback. You had Hoban's running back that won Mr. Football, and he came from a pretty rough background. He was trying to make a name for himself and in his family. You have Kirtland, who has the head coach that is 7th in the nation in winning percentage.
Tiger,
Mr. Tiger, And then you have Marion Local, who's going for their 13th state championship in program history. And then Division 7, obviously Warren JFK wants revenge. That was a good storyline. But then on the other side, I talked about it last week. New Bremen, their football program not too long ago was on the brink of not even existing anymore. They were going to lose their football program. They had a donator
2 state titles in 3 years.
They had a donator come forward and give some money to the program. They were able to build some new facilities, get players more interested in the football, and bring it in. And now here they are. Here they are with 2 state championships in the last 3 years. That's a great story.
That just goes to show to all of our teams and some of the smaller schools around here that gives you a little bit of hope that it can be done, that you can make that turnaround and you can get to that stage if you have the right people in the right positions to make it happen for sure. I also want to shout out Glenville because I had no idea that was Glenville's first state championship.
Yeah, and they rocked.
They've been there plenty of times before the state Final Four. I can't believe that was their first state title because they looked like they were on another level.
But when they played Jefferson, there was something in their eyes. There was something in that game. You knew, okay, this team, they're special. They're gonna go win the state championship.
And you know what? Props to them. I know it hurt to see Jefferson's season end as early as it did. We wanted them to go to the next round, but I mean, for Glenville, that's a Cleveland suburb school that's never won that gold either, too. So I mean, we've seen a plenty of firsts this weekend for state championships, and I think that gives a lot of hope to those schools that are out there vying for their first as well.
And look, if you're a small school like JFK or South Range, and you want like, how do I do this? Well, what are the steps that I need to take? And you look at both those programs and the schedules they have put together. JFK obviously plays a very tough schedule in football. And then South Range, you look at South Range football, they went to a state semifinal in 2005, back when they were in the ITCL. But for the most part, their school athletics programs had never been to a state championship until 2015. That is right around the time where they went outside of the ITCL, they became independent, they formed the NE8, like right around that 15, 16, 17, that started to happen, right? So right around that time, all of a sudden, boys soccer gets there twice, softball gets there twice, baseball gets there and wins it, wrestling wins it, football wins it. Do you think there's something to it where all of a sudden South Range is putting together a little bit more of a meaty schedule and they take what their talent has and they test themselves a little bit more every season, and now all of a sudden you see their student athletes starting to get to state championship games consistently? 7 teams have gotten to the state championship since 2015. Before then, no team had gotten to the state championship game in South Range history. Something to it. Gotta be something to it, right? And you could say open enrollment, that's a factor for sure.
Absolutely.
But there are a lot of teams that have open enrollment that aren't playing the schedule that South Range is playing, and therefore they're not going far in the tournament play.
Yeah,
so,
and I feel like open enrollment's always a good discussion for this because, I mean, I personally I think DJ had a lengthy conversation or discussion about this on a previous Power Hour in the last few weeks, so I don't want to touch on it too much, but like open enrollment kind of just evens the playing field amongst everyone because everyone can get open enrollment. So I mean, to say like South Range is getting open enrollment, invest in the facilities, invest in the programs, invest in people that attract these kids to these programs. And
that's another good point. South Range has a new facility and a new school building. They built that school building in 2011. 4 years later, here they are going to state championship games as an athletics program. So, if you feed into your kids and you're blessed enough, I know every school is not blessed enough to be able to just go build a new school. That's a whole other conversation. So I'm not trying to harp on schools that don't like you to be able to do this.
No, we get
what
it.
I'm saying is because South Range invested in their kids and they went and they built the new school, they built the new facility, and they got themselves a tougher schedule for everybody, and then they got open enrollment too. Open enrollment's a factor, but I don't think you can make it like it was a key. Like once you get open enrollment, there's your key to the castle. It doesn't work like that. But it definitely, to say it was not a factor would be kind of ludicrous.
There's
but,
tons of programs that are perennials in the state Final Four that could be just as attractive as South Range kids. But
you look at how Kirtland built what they have going on, because it wasn't always Kirtland on top, right? And they're a public school that doesn't do open enrollment. Their competitive balance number is 0. It's because they invest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Back when they invested in their program, that has to start somewhere.
Yeah, and obviously there's ways around it. You move into the district, you can get in,
right? And they get a lot of kids in the middle school area that move out from the other Lake County schools, so that doesn't affect the competitive balance number.
I do think
still,
I think it's important to note that like generationally, like kids today are way different than a lot of maybe our viewers or like maybe the parents of kids were used to in when they were in high school. Kids have the ability to quite literally check on any team, see what they're doing, see what their coaches are about, see what the program's all about. Like, so it's not necessarily, I don't like using the phrase like stealing kids in that sense, because I don't think that they are. It's kids can make the same choice for themselves as long as the parents are all right with it. If a kid wants to play for a certain football team, a certain program, a certain coach, I don't think there should be any qualms about allowing them to do so and allowing them to achieve what they want to achieve.
And
for someone like Coach Dan Yeagley, I mean, it's easy to draw in a lot of people because he's well known. You don't just hear about his name in South Range community; you hear it about all the Northeast.
It's a small deterrent because obviously there's that rule where when you go there unless you move into the district, when you go there the first year, you have to sit out the second half of the season. So it's not like schools can just say, "Hey, there's this juggernaut down the road. Let's bring him and go win a state championship this year." You can bring him in and work on him and let him play half the season. Maybe you go far in the tournament the next year, but it's not going to help you this season because he has to sit out the second half.
And if that's what kids want to do, and if they're all right and accepting of that, let them. Like, I mean, if it's not going to affect the current year and they have to play the full season with the team starting the next year, I mean, to me, at least personally, I don't have an issue with it. And I do love to see that there was a mix of your parochial and public schools that were state champions over the weekend.
I will admit that back in my high school days, I wasn't paying attention to the area as much. So I don't know if this is true or not. But since 2012, 2013, we've had more and more teams in our area start to go to state championship games. I mean, we've seen it every year. Why isn't someone's going to a state championship game in some sport? It's got to have something to do with the gates a little bit opening up on that open enrollment front. It's got to have something to do with it.
I would think so too. And I think, I mean, like you said, a lot of these teams are opting to play each other too and not just stick with conference opponents. These non-conferences, they're scheduling up and they're trying to test themselves early in the season. And it's allowed us to see a lot of premier matchups.
One of the things I really like, though, that makes it different than college, football, even with this whole new world of open enrollment and kids being able to go where they want, you still get parity. Like, you still get different teams in the state championship. Like Canfield, they finally beat Chardon. You look at the college football playoffs, you can almost guarantee Ohio's, you're going to get those blue blood teams in the playoffs, right?
At least one of like the 3 or 2.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got 6 teams every year in college that probably have a chance of making the playoffs. And then maybe there's that one-off team every now and then that gets in. It's not like that in high school. Like, there are teams that can come out of nowhere and go and win a state championship still.
They absolutely can. And I mean, I love to see it. I love to see a lot of first state champions over the course of the year. And I mean, a lot of teams that were picked as favorites in their respective conferences weren't even champions at the end of it. We talk about Hoban, you talk about Ironton.
I could be wrong because I didn't pay too much attention to D1, but it wasn't St. Ed's have a big state championship drought before they won this year?
That's a good question.
I think it was 2 in a row, but before I knew there was a long stretch where St. Ed's, obviously they're a historic program with a lot of success in their football program, but I feel like there was a big stretch where they didn't really win a state championship.
I do remember, because when I was in school, St. Ignatius was the better of the 2 schools. Right. St. Ignatius was always playing out of their mind. But it very well could be. And I mean, that was a close game too. That Springfield team gave them a heck of a game. But now St. Ed's was one of those teams that throughout the course just looked dominant, except that one loss to Massillon, Washington. But similar to Canfield, I feel like this is what I always talk about with losing during the course of a regular season isn't always the worst thing imaginable. Nobody wants to lose. I get that. I get every coach wants to.
But every team that won a state championship, this year,
with the exception of South Range,
I was going to say lost a game or had a game where they were exposed to a lot of adversity.
Absolutely.
South Range did not lose that Struthers game, but that was a bad game. They did not play well at all.
And I mean, if you want to talk about the only game in the season that South Range, I guess, quote unquote, should have or could have lost, it was that one. I mean, I don't think anyone even came close. I think the second most turnovers a team forced against South Range was 2, and there were 6 in that game.
Did the team that beat Hoban have a loss in this season?
That's a good question.
To see if we had any other than South Range. Do we have any undefeated? Glenville didn't lose, so they're undefeated state champions.
Yeah, Hoban played. Let me double check their thing.
Right,
they were 15-1. Central Catholic was, so they had 1 loss on the season.
So I could be, because I know Marion Local lost. And I'm pretty sure New Bremen lost a couple of games because they didn't even finish first in their conference. So I think the only undefeated state champions this year were Glenville and South Range.
And then you got Marion Local too. Marion Local chiming in. That's who they played, yeah. But Marion Local was one of those teams too where we talk about this year. with the amount of teams too, Marion Local, was one of those teams that was 16-0 this season.
Okay, they were 16-0.
So them, South Range, and then Glenville were all undefeated. But 4 teams that won state championships that all lost a game in the season. And I feel like that just goes back to saying, like, you got to be, when you schedule up, when you have a gauntlet of a schedule in front of you, sometimes over the course of a 10-week regular season plus playoffs, you got to be willing to take a step back before you start moving forward. And some teams have to do that. Some teams have to experience that loss or have to experience being human so that they can get better. And for a lot of these teams, we saw that too. Canfield was a different team after Cheney. They were. They didn't allow a lot of the same mistakes to happen. They really locked down the special teams unit. You never really saw another team due to them in the special teams what Cheney was able to do. So I feel like you see that with Canfield and what they were able to do, how they were able to adjust, how they were able to respond and come back from that loss is a perfect example of, you can't let one game define your season and you can't let one game define you. You got to be willing to take that step backward before you can move forward.
And then you look at South Range; they barely turned the ball over after that Struthers game.
Exactly, and I mean that's just the case. Is sometimes the best way to learn is to just go out there, do it, mess it up a little bit, and then figure it out hands-on wise. Like sometimes that's the only way you could figure it out.
It's a great lesson. Even the perfect seasons aren't going to be perfect. That's the perfect season is kind of an oxymoron a little bit because you're gonna have at least one game. There's no way, even Glenville, even Marion Local, there was no way that every game on that schedule, their coaches thought we played absolutely perfect and we did everything right. Like there had to be one game in those two teams' schedule, and definitely in South Range's schedule, where they say, "Whoa, you're lucky to come away with that one."
The funny thing too, the closest game that I've seen on Marion Local schedule, and they might have been one of the most dominating teams. Wapakoneta is the one that kind of forced them a little bit, forced them into a closer game towards the second half. But the funny thing was, after that one game, which was close, they didn't have another close game until they played Kirtland. And
you know what? That might come into it too, because in that Kirtland game, they won, but they were sloppy. They were throwing the ball to Kirtland a lot. They turned the ball over 3 times. They won the game on a pick 6. That was their game-winning touchdown, really. But they looked like they hadn't been really put through adversity before. They were kind of making a lot of mental errors, throwing the ball away, fumbling the ball when they had the lead 14-6 in Kirtland's territory. So Marion Local, to your point, maybe they weren't tested too much this season, but they were making a lot of mistakes when they were tested this year.
And for
Kirtland the same way, like Kirtland ran through their season, really.
They really did
not push too much, and they were making mistakes in a close game too.
Credit Marion Local too, 11 shutouts in a 16-game season. So like they were
scored once
defensively, and you saw that in that Kirtland game as well.
That Kirtland touchdown was off a short field, off of a fumble, and it was a pretty well designed pass play that got the kid into the corner of the end zone against a trailing cornerback, where they brought a little crosser action. Defenses will call it a pick play. Offenses will call it a rub route, but either way, it slowed down the defender a little bit, and it got the Kirtland wide receiver, tailing towards the corner, and he was pretty open for them to hit it for a touchdown. But it was a short field because Marion Local fumbled at their own 25-yard line before that. So not giving up one long drive to that Kirtland team that had been running all over teams throughout the season, that was impressive. That defense is for real.
It absolutely is. And what we saw too is, throughout the course of the season, they also beat New Bremen too. So that was one of New Bremen's losses with the Marion Local. And then I just take a peek over too, and another team that was undefeated, Glenville, was the same case, where they played 2 games, back-to-back road games in weeks 2 and 3, where it was 20-14, 27-21 that they won. And then they went on a string of shutting out 6 consecutive opponents after that too. So it's with football especially too, like I said, the best teams have 11 guys that work in unison on the football field at all times, special teams, offense, defense. It takes time to build that chemistry every single year. It doesn't matter if you're bringing back everyone, unless you're bringing back 11 guys on every single front, you got to take some time. Even if there's one new change in that 11 guys, it takes time to build that chemistry for them to understand what your assignments are, where you need to be, how to play with this team. And that's why you have that regular season. And some of the best teams, I feel like, are the ones that get tested. They take that step back. They're able to look at it, realize what they did wrong, and correct it to go forward. And once they do that, the thing is, what I talk about all the time, it's almost even more dangerous when you push a team, or you beat them, or you push them in the regular season, because then you just showed them the one chink in their armor that they have, and now they're going to shore that up, and they're not going to have that anymore going forward unless you have the talent to do it.
Hey, look, Springfield last year, I know they didn't go to the state championship game. They went to the state semifinals, but they didn't look good their first 2 games at all.
No.
Right?
We saw that same thing. Springfield didn't look good the first 4 games, and then they pushed JFK more than any other team before New Bremen in the playoffs. Like, I mean, they gave JFK just about everything that they could handle in that case. I mean, just to kind of put the whole wraps on this football season, another fantastic 16 weeks of football here on the network with so many great voices, so many great announcers, and so many great teams that we were able to represent. And for the first time ever since 2017, we're finally able to say we have a couple of state champions in the sport of football. I mean, we've been,
I think, 16, right? Because 17, Gerard lost in the state championship.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, but why
JFK won it in 16?
Yeah, and we weren't established yet until 17. So we've had a team there, but we couldn't get over that hump, and this was the year to get over the hump. And you talk about just great seasons and 16 weeks of a story too. I mean, credit goes out to the announcers. Credit both DJ, credit Richie too, because like you want to talk about falling into a team and like becoming almost a part of that team in a sense too. Like that's what both of those guys did too. Both DJ and Richie were able to bring you that coverage that nobody else was able to bring you of these 2 state championship teams.
Funny story, like, because I was with DJ for the baseball state championship for South Range. And I got emotional. It was South Range. It was South Range love. It was like, oh, we just won a state championship. And for like the next year, I got a hard time. Oh, Anthony, you're going to cry this time? Because, and then DJ texted me after the game on Friday night. He goes, Karma bit me in the butt because I cried like a baby.
I didn't get a chance to see him, but
I was like, but that's the thing. Like, it's not like one of the things don't want to beat our own drum too much because we're not about that. But one of the things that makes YSN a special place to be in my eyes, and in a special place to be for these kids, is we don't just show up, do our job, and leave. Like, we are emotionally invested in these kids and these programs' success. DJ, you have it with a lot of schools. I have it with a couple of schools. We all have, every announcer is locked into a team, at least one team, that they're emotionally invested in their success. And some people will say that's a homer, it's not professional, but I think that's what makes us special. And what makes us different and makes us a unique spot to be in. For a high school network. I mean, every college has their own, broadcasting team that follows them. Every NFL and pro team has their own radio people that follow them, and baseball has their own actual TV people that get emotionally invested. So why shouldn't high schools? That's the whole thing. Like, high schools at YSN have their own people that are emotionally invested in that team's success.
For high schools too, I feel like it has a chance to connect with a lot more people than maybe your pros and your college sports, because it's one of the things that universally connects just about all of us here in the continental United States, where all of us have had that. Just about all of us. I don't want to say all of us because it's not 100%. I get that, but a majority of us have had that high school experience where one way or another you were involved in high school in some way or another. Some people were more in love with their schools than others while they were in it, but one thing's for sure is that it connects all of us just about in some way.
Just wanted to throw up the Raiders. I was very involved with that high school, but anyway, but back to that point, like, even in the highs and lows, like, you could hear Tom O'Brien's call. He was just as bummed as the team was that they weren't able to win that state championship game. He was just as emotionally invested in that loss as DJ and Richie were emotionally invested in the Canfield and South Range wins.
Absolutely. And I mean, for Dom O'Brien, you got to give him all the love in the world too. I mean, he supports that JFK team and covers them like no other too. And I mean, the voice of the JFK Eagles, they'll be back again, and we'll hopefully hear Dom O'Brien's voice rally them all.
They're an athletics program. They're going to be good in basketball. Have a chance to at least go to the regionals.
Coach
JFK. It's JFK. What are you going to do? You can't stop him.
Should be fun too, because basketball season now officially starts for a majority of these teams.
Yeah, and it's funny. Canfield actually went and played a basketball game before the football season was over, and they got a big win. So Canfield was out of the three. Canfield was the only team that said we're still going to go and play. We're going to sort of roll the chips and see where they land and see if we can get a win, and then bring these football players in after their state championship and build up and get better. And Canfield actually dominated in their first basketball game last week.
And that was a nice win for Canfield, and we'll be looking for both Cardinals and Raiders going forward in the hoop season.
Yeah, and now South Range basketball, to talk about hoops a little bit for all these teams, they're going to try to take that state championship success. A lot of kids on that team that are going to go to the basketball team, they're going to try to get that program's first district championship this year. I mean, that's one of the programs at South Range that has been talented, but always run into a little bit of a boulder, a little bit of a wall before they can even get to regionals. It's been Canton Central Catholic. Before then, it was Springfield, the rivalry that will always show up again in the tournament. So, South Range still looking for their program's first district championship in boys basketball.
Yeah, and I mean, I love the sport so much too, but that's one of the sports we've always kind of struggled in this area too. But I think it's on the rise, and I think you're starting to see, similar to football, where these teams are scheduling up, they're scheduling better, and they're starting to get accustomed with the type of talent that's in the region and beyond.
Even there, we've seen teams in the last couple of years get to state championship games. West Branch could have, if COVID didn't cancel that. They got to the semifinals. They got to a state championship a couple of years before that with Melinda Trimmer, who went on to play at YSU. We saw McDonald go to the state championship a couple of years ago. So where we're seeing teams break that ceiling a little bit, which means you keep knocking on it, you keep chipping away, you're going to break through eventually.
I think a lot more people in the Raider community are more hyped up about the wrestling season coming up, because those are
wrestling and basketball both gearing up.
Yeah, defending state champions and wrestling coming back for another season too. And I mean, we already know Gary Altsizer is going to be talking about that on Wednesdays, but that's another team we're going to have to follow. Raiders looking to go 2 in a row.
I like that because you have guys that made solid impacts on that team on both sides of that sport. So you have guys that made a lot of impact on the football field going to go into wrestling at South Range, but then you had guys that made a name for themselves on the football team that are going to go play on the basketball team as well. So you're going to have leaders on both the wrestling mat and the basketball court that both have really stepped up and been a big part of a state championship.
No doubt.
So it's going to be fun. I can't wait for hoop season in the Thriller Dome at South Range. They don't open their home slate until December 16th. So patiently waiting until the Raiders come home on December 16th for my chance to call some South Range boys basketball. And we're going to keep going. That's kind of the bow on the football season. Before we put a bow on, I do want to ask you one thing, because you were on the field. What were the celebrations like from your perspective to see the team give Coach Yeagley and Coach Pav ice baths and see both those coaches kind of win their first state championship? They've both been with those programs for so long. What was it like for you, from your perspective, being able to see it from the field level?
From the field level, it was really cool too. I mean, just going down on there, you could see the team, you could see the fans were all getting somewhat emotional, but the excitement was definitely there. And I think afterwards too, in the press conference room, you could kind of see it. It was starting to finally, I think, hit a lot of the guys and finally start to hit Coach Yeagley too. And I mean, I'm sure it's hit them now like a ton of bricks days after. They now realize, but I feel like that was when we were they were just starting to realize what they had done, what they accomplished, and what they were able to do for this incredible season. And I feel like it's one of those cases too, where, I mean, he's such a well-known guy. He's such a legendary coach, I feel like, in this area. And you want to talk about a way to kind of like cap off everything. You want to talk about a way to kind of put that bow on top of everything. It was a team that's been there. They've been fighting for it. They saw that 2017 team fall just shy in the state title run too, in the semifinals. But for the South Range team, it's one of those cases where all those kids bought in. They all believed in Coach Yeagley, and like Coach Yeagley says, it's a family over there too. So I mean, when you treat each other as family and you care that much about the guy next to you, you become almost unstoppable. And it was really cool to see it. I didn't get a chance to see the Canfield one. I had to sneak out because I was at a basketball game that night as well. So I had to
hurry, a lot of duty.
I had to hurry back up to Fitch so I could make sure I was there for that.
Did you leave by the time that Canfield had control of the game?
Yeah. It was like, it was at least past the halftime. Canfield was well up too. So.
I know at halftime it was still in question. I think it was like 14-7 at halftime. So it wasn't like for sure Canfield was going to win this game. So I would have been a nervous Nelly if I had to leave at halftime.
I got to listen to it though on the way home. So
right.
it was it's a great experience too. I mean, enjoy it for a few days, but right back to work in the sports season too.
You got a game tonight. I got a game tonight. We have plenty of basketball on the network tonight. We also had basketball going on during the excitement of the state championship games. We're going to recap all of that. We'll talk about what's going on tonight when we come back after our first break on Running Point. Brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown.
21 News delivers the news as it happens, using the latest technology from where it happens.
Live here outside the Mahoney County.
On air, online,
Wednesday afternoon weather update.
Very dangerous.
and on the 21 News social media platforms.
I'm on the road right now.
21 News, the Valley's only locally owned source for trusted news since 1953.
As fine as the eye can see, the finest hardwoods from the finest trees. Made for your home and within your means, Baird Brothers will help fulfill your dreams. Let life and light come shining through in quiet morns. And heavy traffic, too. Find your easy-to-afford fine hardwood floors and doors and more at BairdBrothers.com.
Every customer has a story, and at Greenwood Chevrolet, we are committed to making sure it ends with you in the right vehicle. I get to be part of somebody's adventure, whether it's buying a car for the first time, helping them get approved, or finding the perfect car for their budget. I'm proud that people trust me with their finances. They trust me to take care of them, and they trust me with their story. I'm Tracy, and I'm ready to go the extra mile for you, only at Greenwood Chevrolet.
Welcome back to Running Point on ysnlive.com, brought to you by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. Anthony Hartwig alongside. Not alongside a bunch of coughing, but alongside Ty Bartell. And Ty, we've spent a long time on football, rightfully so. State championships got us excited. I still got phlegm. Gross. But got it taken care of now. But we still have basketball on tonight and basketball scores to go over. I'm just going to run down the scores of the games that happened over the weekend, and then maybe a quick thought about them, and then we'll go into the games that are going to be on the network tonight, and then we'll get out of here and be back tomorrow from 1 to 2 on Running Point. So here are your basketball scores over the weekend real quick as we start on Friday. As we saw Demi Watson for Liberty get her 1,000th career point, as Liberty got the win over Hudson, 58-43, first win of the season for a Liberty team. That's a Division I Hudson team that knocked Louisville out of the tournament last year, by the way. So not a slouch team that Liberty was able to bounce back and beat 58-43. Liberty trying to respond from their loss on Monday against East earlier that week.
Yeah,
another member of the 1,000-point club, Jackson Brewer from Wellsville, gets his 1,000th career point. Wellsville gets the win 58-40 over Latonia on Friday. Mooney got the big win over Boardman. Defensive battle 47-38. Mooney gets the victory. Badger beat Campbell Memorial 55-43. Niles wins over Champion 48-29. We saw more. Let's get back up to the top here. We saw Crestview beat Jackson Milton 69-61. East Liverpool got the big win in their first rivalry matchup of the year over Beaver Local 75-49. We saw Howland get the win over Lakeview 65-40. Lisbon over East Palestine 49-39. We saw Brookfield just dominate Hubbard 73-41, the final score there. Liberty got beaten by Warren Harding 64-27. We saw Poland bounce back from their tough 2 overtime loss to Holland and get the win 63-38 over Springfield. LeBray gets their first win of the year, 76-51 over Middle Ridge. Fitch, you were there, got the win over Hudson, 62-50. Let's see, Edison was the only girls game in action on Friday, and they got the win 52-20 over Orange. Newton Falls beats Heartland Christian 65-49. Matthews beats Western Reserve by 4, 51-47. Tough game there for the Blue Devils. The Bombers come into Garrettsville Garfield and lay siege 63-43. They get the win there on Friday night. Ursuline opens the year with a dominating win over Girard, 70-38. And then we also saw on Saturday, get some scores for you here. Let's see. Wyndham got the win over Rootstown, 60-54. And then the girls got the loss over Rootstown, 48-12. So Wyndham splits the boys-girls doubleheader. Canfield gets the win over Mooney, 57-30 on the girls' side. Also, some more girls basketball scores. Southeast beat Newton Falls, 44-34. On boys' side, Orange took one on the chin to one of the best teams in the state, Richmond Heights, 73-16. Boys' side as well, Bristol edged Garfield, 60-57. Newton Falls boys beat Southeast, 59-32. We saw Brookfield boys beat Sharpsville, 55-49. We saw Edgewood boys beat Ashton Beulah St. John, 82-50. Let's see. Warren Harding beat Lakeview on the girls' side, 38-34. West Branch fell to Marlington, 51-28. Want to send our thoughts to Sophia Gregory, who is out for a little bit with an injury. Obviously, that changes the outlook of that West Branch season a little bit. But they fall to Marlington, 51-28. Ursuline girls get the win over Badger, 61-38. While we're on the Ursuline thing, reminder that the Ursuline girls game tonight against South Range has been postponed. So if you're looking at that schedule, you're planning to go to Ursuline to watch South Range and Ursuline fight tonight. That game has been postponed. It is not happening tonight in Ursuline. We have Garfield getting the win on the girls' side over Hubbard, 56-28. And I think that's the last score of the weekend. Salem got the win over Minerva. I think that final score was 50-14. So Salem goes on the road and wins. So those are your scores from the weekend. Ty, any quick thoughts about the weekend of basketball? I know you got to see a couple of games yourself.
Yeah, I'm just personally excited about this Fitch boys basketball team after beating Hudson, who had the height advantage against him. But a lot of the younger guys stepped up big time. Guys like Marcel Finkley, that was a sophomore. Carter Owens, that was a sophomore. Led by senior Gianni Maley. All three guys had double-digit scoring, and this is without Deshaun Vaughn, who's a very good basketball player in his own right. I'm excited to just see, too, because for Fitch's situation, just a lot of young talent, and there's just something really exciting about seeing those guys come back that second season of varsity, and you see everything start to click, and they're starting to really understand the game positioning, where they need to be, and they start moving a lot more in fluency.
All right, so here are the girls' games that will be in action tonight. We will start with the earliest tip-off in JFK as champion comes to town. Dom O'Brien going to be fresh off his call on Saturday to call some basketball tonight. Champion versus JFK, 5:30 tip-off. At 6 o'clock, Latonia travels to United. Chris Sigler will have the call. Also at 6 o'clock, Liberty travels to Canfield. Richie Giuliano will be there. Cheney at Niles. Ian O'Brien going to have that one. These are all going to be normal 7 o'clock tip-offs from now on, by the way. Columbiana travels to Lisbon. Eric Hopp will have the call there. I will be in Valley Christian. My first time calling a game for Valley Christian, actually. First time getting to go to that gym. East Palestine coming to town, so it's going to be an EOAC battle tonight at 7 o'clock. Girard goes to Crestview. Could be a very fun one in Crestview in a non-conference action. Hubbard goes to Springfield. Jamie Thompson going to have the call there. By the way, Larry Scragg will be in Crestview for that call on Girard Crestview. Indian Creek goes to Beaver Local. Mike McKenzie going to be on the call there. LeBray travels to Middle Ridge. Matt Mayer and Jordan will be on the call there. Boardman hosting Poland. Poland undefeated, trying to win their first road test of the year. Noah Doty will be on the call. Walt Jesuit at Fitch. Ty, you're on this one. 7 o'clock is your tip-off. Western Reserve will go to Struthers. The school will be taking care of that. And other games that are happening tonight, Campbell Memorial will be at Heartland Christian. Badger hosts Chalker. East Liverpool hosts Harrison Central, and Southern Local will host Wellsville. That'll do it for tonight's games. Ty, other than the game you're at, any one of those kind of pique your interest of games that you might want to be able to go see or tune into?
I mean, like you said, Gerard Crestview, I think, is going to be a fun game considering everything that both these teams are bringing back. And I think both of these teams weren't getting a lot of maybe looks for their respective conferences and their respective seasons. But I think that's turning around now. I think Crestview has the chance to be one of the better teams, too, and even make a run for that conference championship in the MVAC side. And I mean, Gerard always seems to be a tough team. They're bringing back a decent amount from a year ago, and they look to be a tough loss or a tough win against anyone in that NE8.
I'm looking forward to Liberty at Canfield to see what the Leopards can do. It'll be their second straight game against a Division I opponent. Obviously, they struggled against East to open the season, trying to figure out life without Sienna Smith, who is hurt and out for the year. So trying to figure out life without her. It's still Demi Watson, still Leah Foster. Both of those are just absolute studs that can score 20 or 30 on you at any given night. So interesting to see what they'll bring to the table against a Canfield team that has looked really impressive in their first two games of the season, with wins over a healthy West Branch team and then a dominating win over Mooney. So
shout out Izzy Morrow too, who's on the injury list for JFK as well. So Izzy Morrow, we also wish you the best in getting back healthy and on the court as soon as possible.
A lot of unfortunate injuries in the first couple weeks of the season.
Yeah, you never want to see it, but we obviously wish the best of health to all of our student athletes going forward. And I mean, to kind of just talk about that Liberty East game a little bit, a lot of props going to Tanisha Franklin.
East is like they're world beaters right now. They're 4-1. Their one loss was in overtime to Lakeview to open the season.
Tanisha Franklin has been one of those coaches, athletic directors that is just she's bought in, she's gotten it, and she's never given up on the Golden Bears throughout all of it too. Throughout some of their struggles, she's been 100% willing to build this team, get it back to where it once was. And boy, oh boy, the Golden Bears, man, they are firing on all cylinders right now with some impressive wins early on in the season.
I've said it before, like the East is hard to prepare for because they don't really run a traditional offense. They just kind of take the ball and use their athleticism to find space. A lot of ISO, a lot of one-on-one opportunities. They don't really run set plays. It's almost like you're watching an NBA game sometimes because the NBA players don't really run offensive sets. It's a lot of trying to get the ball to the playmakers' hands and getting them one-on-one and having them take them athletically. That's what East does.
Coach Franklin, over the past couple of years with a lot of these younger girls too, has really focused on not only just developing the talent in the gym too, but developing that IQ, making them smart basketball players, making them have good decision-making skills on the court too, to where they can go in ISO, but have the ability to kick out and know to look for their teammates when they bring that double or they try to bring a trap on one of them.
They also play really good defense that forces a lot of turnovers and easy buckets on the other end.
And that's the one thing a lot of coaches will tell you too. Like if we're struggling offense is something that takes a little bit of time. It might take some years for us to be coherent offense, but there's one thing you can always teach. And the one thing that's like a universal kind of a shift, it's that defense. It's what you can do with your defense, because you can compete with just about any team if your defense is up there. I mean, take plenty of teams that have done it in this area.
Unless you're running exotic zones, defense, all it takes is effort, right? Let's go out there and give me 100% effort and you can play good defense.
Look how good of a season Salem had last year. And I mean, you talk about the effort of just beating girls to the other side of the court on misses. Like you beat them on fast breaks to get back defensively. It's hustle, it's effort. And that's one of those, goes back to that old saying, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And that's exactly what East has they've kind of brought that mantra into their program.
Salem's 4-0 in the season. Their next game is going to be Saturday at Poland as part of the United Way Classic.
It's going to be a great one too, because Salem and Poland, both great teams again. Both great coaches again. I've gotten a chance to talk with both of them prior to the season. I'm excited because both these teams play like teams. They play a lot of defense and they play a lot of team offense basketball. So I'm excited to see it because you're going to see two really well-run, well-operating basketball teams.
Tough week for the Bulldogs. They have Bournemouth tonight. They open the NE8 slate with Gerard on Thursday, who Coach Blanche thinks is going to be one of those teams that is fighting for a top spot with a healthy CH, a triplet back on that team. And then you got Salem on Saturday. So we're going to have to see how Poland comes out of this week. How all these teams come out of this week is going to be a fun ride, as it's the first week of officially nothing but basketball season.
We close our book on football season. We put a bow on it. We thank them all for 16
awesome
weeks.
bow, the best bow ever.
16 weeks of just nothing but fantastic entertainment from these young student athletes for a lot of communities throughout northeastern Ohio. And we got the storybook ending that we wanted for a couple of teams, and we're hoping to carry it right into the winter sports season.
All right, so I guess we close out by saying congratulations to South Range and Canfield, the new 2022 state champions in football. Congratulations to Warren JFK on an incredible season, state runners up this year in 2022. And we will see you on the basketball court, everybody. It's time for basketball season. We are so excited, and we hope you are too. A lot of games on the network tonight. Make sure to check them out at ysnlive.com/live. And you can check them all out for free thanks to our wonderful sponsors. By the way, I want to give another shout out to our wonderful sponsor up at Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown, has been supporting this show in YSN for a long time. So thank you to them. And then want to preview tomorrow's show. I'll be back tomorrow from 1 to 2 with Casey Kanicki from Edgewood and one of their newest members of the 1,000 Point Club. She'll be joining me at 1:15. We're going to have a talk with an Edgewood girls basketball player. I'd love to dip down into Ashtabula County and give our new friends down there some love. So Casey Kanicki from Edgewood will be on at 1:15. Still have a couple of pre-recorded interviews from Ty to play this week too. So you'll be hearing from Ty before he comes back on Friday for a week recap as well. So yeah. I'll be back tomorrow from 1 to 2, and enjoy the night. Enjoy the night of basketball on ysnlive.com/.